Nicole for Simon Says Stamp STAMPtember with a card featuring the exclusive limited edition stamp set from Mama Elephant Merry Mail. This cute stamp set has a little Santa in an airplane, an elf parachuting down holding presents, some additional parachutes, some little flying mail, all kinds of cute greetings, just so much fun, and complements the other stamps and dies in the Mama Elephant collection, especially the little Santa agenda, little elf agenda, things like that would be perfect complements to this stamp set. I am starting with a piece of smooth white cardstock trimmed to A2 size, so 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, and I'm building my scene. I've also die cut 2 cloud borders from the Mama Elephant on the Hills die collection that I'm going to use across the top of my card and also the bottom. The elf parachuting is going to be stamped on the background and on that bottom border, so that I can create kind of a dimensional look, and we're only going to be fussy cutting that parachute from the design. So all of the stamping is going to be done first. I'm going to ink my background with a cloud stencil and some distress ink, but there's absolutely no masking on this card at all, and I'll show you how I got around that with this card. I am doing all my stamping on Neenah's smooth white cardstock so I can color everything in with Copic markers, using Hero Arts Intense Black ink to stamp all of my images. We've got the cute little Merry trail coming out of the Santa in his airplane, 2 phrases from the stamp set stamped below to finish off the greeting, and then some parachuting gifts, the parachuting elf, and some mail. I'm going to start with this mini clouds stencil from My Favorite Things and some tumbled glass distress ink. I'm going to be sure to start on my stencil and just very lightly ink my background and just pull that ink off the stencil onto my background and kind of flip my stencil and work my way up. Now, it's hard to completely avoid without masking, but I'm using a really light color, and where I can, I'm trying not to cover up the areas too much. I also made sure to not go over the Santa's face at all with the ink so that there's no blue on the face. Anywhere else there's this light blue ink, I can cover it up really easily with my Copic markers. I want to include a little blue ink on both of On the Hills borders that I'm using, so I'm applying this along the bottom edge, again being really careful to keep that blue ink off of the elf's face. And then I will do the same thing on the top border so that the whole design is really cohesive and matches nicely. But with these 2 borders, I'm going to have some awesome dimension on this card. Once I have all of my inking done, it's time to start coloring in all of these cute images. I'm using Copic markers today to color everything in. We're going to start with the faces and then work our way through the rest of the design. I've listed the colors of Copic markers I'm using across the top of the screen for easy reference. I'm using E00, 11, 13, and R20 for the faces on both the elf and Santa. For the red areas on Santa's outfit and his airplane, I'm using R35, 37, and 39. Starting with my light color and just kind of pulling in and blending out to that darker color combination. You can see that anywhere there was blue ink from that tumbled glass distress ink stenciled on the background, it's covered up very easily with the markers. This is a great way to create kind of more of a 1-layer card, especially if you didn't want to add the die cut borders, without having to do any masking. Masking is definitely an option if you want to. I tend to prefer not to mask teeny tiny images like this just because it's a little bit harder to cut out, but you could definitely do that if you don't want to have to worry about getting ink where you don't want it. The green color I am using here is YG 21, 23, and 17, and the cool gray I used for the rest of the airplane is C5 and C8. I purposely added some of the images onto the cloud borders, the On the Hills cloud borders I'm using, to make the scene really flow from top to bottom and not just be in the center of the card. I was looking for a way to create depth and dimension without the use of dyes for the images, I guess, and still add some kind of interest. And that's where I came up with these fun little cloud borders. It's perfect for the airplane and parachuting images and provides a great way so that the whole design flows throughout the whole card. We're going to move down to the elf now, coloring his outfit in with greens and reds, same greens and reds that I've already used in other areas of the card. Not a ton of blending needs to be done for most of these areas. They're pretty small. One of the gifts he's holding, I'm going to color in with some pinks with RV 52 and 55. I've also used that on the bow, on the present up at the top of the card. I decided to do alternating colors for all of the parachutes. This one's going to be red and green. We'll do a couple of other color combinations for the remaining 2 parachuting gifts. I pulled in the dark color from the top and bottom, blended with my mid-tone color, and then went back with my light color to blend it all out. This parachute, I colored in the parachute on the base of the card, but I will also be stamping and coloring this parachute on a scrap piece of Neenah smooth white cardstock, cutting it out and popping it up with some foam adhesive. I like to color the one underneath as well as the one on top because when you pop it up you can still see that color underneath, and I didn't want just a white outline there, or a black outline, pardon me. The next parachute up at the top of the card, I went with aqua and pink. I thought we needed to pull in another color here, and this kind of ties into the blue of the clouds and is a great option. It's one of my favorites. I love pink, aqua, and red for Christmas, and green. So that one's pink and aqua. We did aqua for the present down, the other present that the elf is holding on to, and then we're just going to color in the hair with a couple of brown colors. And finish off the last gift package there with reds and greens. The little bell on the tip of the elf's hat, I did yellow with Y08. And the last parachute we will color in with aqua and green before we move on to the little flying letters that are floating down. In the finished card, you might notice that there are some little stamped images that show movement of those, and I will share that here in just a little bit. I added those kind of afterwards, after I got everything else colored and put together. Whenever I picked colors over an area that maybe had some stenciling, I tried to make sure that I picked something that would cover it. Pretty much everything I used here covers the color, the tumbled glass distress ink color. It's a nice light color, which I find this technique works best with. So any of your lighter distress ink colors are going to work with this technique. One of the envelopes is BG 11 and 13, our aqua colors. And I went ahead and decided to pop up my 2 borders, and then I'll finish coloring that last envelope. And I'm using some scrapbook adhesives, foam adhesive squares. These are nice light profile, and they're going to work to give our card a little dimension without being too bulky. We'll attach both borders with the scrapbook adhesives, foam adhesive squares, and also the top of that one parachute that we're going to fussy cut. We want to line this up with the bottom of the card. These On the Hills dies have great stitching detail along the top edge and the bottom edge, so really nice finishing touches. I'm going to take a black glaze pen and add detail to the eyes on the elf. Let's go ahead and add our second border, doing the same thing with our foam adhesive squares. We're going to cover this and stamp it. In the finished card, there are scattered snowflakes throughout the design. I did this after I added the foam adhesive. It was one time where I was super glad that I used lots of foam adhesive. Normally, it would be a lot easier to do this before you add your foam adhesive to the layers, but it was kind of one of those last minute things. I felt like my card needed a little something else, and so I went back to my Merry Mail stamp set and added the snowflake from the design. Here are those foam adhesive squares on my fussy cut parachute. We want to line that up and adhere it right to that design, and that gives it some nice dimension that lines up perfectly with the dimensional On the Hills cloud border. I'm going to add some highlight detail to parts of the colored images with a white pen. I'll also add some little white dots to the elf's cheek and go back in with my black pen and add detail to Santa's eyes. I'm going to also take the white pen and certain sections of a couple of the larger parachutes, I'm going to add detail to those, like maybe a plaid or a stripe or dot, all three. I did the plaid here on the green stripes of this one, and then on the parachute at the top of the card, the pink sections are going to have polka dots, and the aqua sections are going to have stripes. This is a fun way to dress up your images very quickly and easily. Just following the natural shape of the parachute with my little stripes there. Going to finish with a couple more little highlights. And be really careful with your black pen, just barely touch it, because a lot can tend to come out if you push it too hard onto those little teeny tiny eyes. We also need to color in this last envelope, which is colored in with our 35, 37, and 39. And the postage stamp I'm going to color with a little green. Our coloring is all done, so it's time to add the final finishing details to this adorable little Merry Mail scene card. Those are the little motion stamps for the mail, so it appears that they're floating down from the clouds. I added that with a little black VersaFine ink. And then I've got my snowflake here that I'm going to stamp with the Tumbled Glass Distress ink. This really complements the background of the card. I considered stamping and embossing with silver and other things like that, but ultimately I decided that the blue would complement the design but not overpower it, and I'm really glad I did. We can dress up the center of these snowflakes then with a little Nuvo crystal drops in White Blizzard, so they have a little touch of sparkle without actually having to emboss anything. I made sure and added snowflakes to the middle section and the borders, the cloud borders of the card as well. It fills in the design and really finishes off the scene perfectly. The Nuvo crystal drops in the center of each snowflake will dry completely clear but have a little bit of a sparkle finish. And then to add a few additional snowflake looking elements to the card, I'm going to take some Nuvo crystal drops in gloss white, and we'll add droplets in varying sizes. I tried to keep them pretty small throughout the design. And that'll add some nice texture and interest throughout as well. Once this is done, I can take this panel and attach it to a white top fold card base. And this STAMPtember Mama Elephant Merry Mail card is all finished. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this STAMPtember holiday themed card featuring Mama Elephant Merry Mail stamps. The supplies I used to create my card are listed and linked below the video here on the Simon Says Stamp YouTube channel. Please be sure to subscribe to the Simon Says Stamp channel for lots of inspiring STAMPtember videos. Thank you for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.